Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I want to share with you my unpopular homeschool opinions. If you're new here, I have a 9-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, 2-year-old son, currently homeschooling my 9 and 5-year-old. This has been our first year homeschooling. Before that, my oldest was in public school system. So I wanted to share some of my opinions that I have noticed aren't exactly the norm in the homeschooling community. And this is not to say that my opinions are right and the other person's is wrong. This is just to share my opinions. Let's get that out of the way right now to share a different perspective. So the first one, and I have a list here, so if you see me looking down, that's why. First one is, I think there needs to be more in standard homeschool regulations. So it varies from state to state, depending on where you live on, what kind of regulations you have to do. It could be very strict, where I know some East Coast, they require you to have a bachelor's degree in order to teach your child. Some states require absolutely nothing. I live in a state that requires absolutely nothing to homeschool. You don't have to turn anything in, nothing, no testing. And I think for a lot of homeschoolers, that's seen as a positive thing, and I actually see it as a negative. I think when you don't have any accountability, that's not exactly the best thing. I think there needs to be standard, basic regulations that cover all of the states. I think that would be fair, and I think that's ensuring that children are getting a basic education. I think a basic education is a right. And I'll get into this with my number 2 reason, which is I don't think all parents are equipped to homeschool or should homeschool. Let me get more into that. If you are a parent that cannot push your own personal bias aside to teach your child, then I don't think you should be teaching them. I've seen a lot of parents who are more interested in instructing their child to see things exactly the way they see it without any outside perspective, to be in this little bubble. And I think ultimately that is not good for your child. You're not really giving them the full perspective, the full options of their education there. If you're only presenting one perspective or idea, I think you're limiting your child. So if you can't put your own personal bias aside, I don't think you should really homeschool your child. Number 2, it's a big time commitment. It's definitely a personal sacrifice you have to make. And there's a lot of people out there that are going to tell you it's easy and it's fun. It's not always easy and fun. And that's the truth. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't want to do it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't or you're failing, but going into it, you should know that that's a time commitment. You're going to be spending not only your time, but your resources. And that's something to take into account, as well as budget. It's going to cost you money. Not everybody has the resources, and there's people out there that tell you it'll cost very little. I don't think that's the truth, because at some point you are going to be needing to access resources, and they're not always free. So number 3 is homeschooling costs money. And again, those people will tell you you can homeschool with just a library card. And the honest truth is, probably the younger levels, kindergarten, 1st grade, that would be pretty easy. But as you get into the older levels, you're going to be teaching things that probably are not within your scope. I mean, there are some of us out there that are scientists and mathematicians, so it's possible, yes. But you're going to need resources. We are not experts in the field that we are teaching, which means we need to be able to pull resources from experts in those fields, so our children get a well-rounded education. You will be accessing resources that will eventually cost you money, and that can vary depending on budget. But I think budget is a big thing that needs to be considered when homeschooling, because it really, that sets your limitations on some of the things you're capable of doing. Number 4, I think science and religion can be taught together. I've yet to come by a Christian science curriculum that was not biased. But in our house, we teach both perspectives. My children attend church, Sunday school, we learn about creation, different things like that. But my children also learn about evolution, science, things like that. And I think in the homeschooling community, there's this big divide. And I don't think there needs to be a divide. I think there are people out there that are faith-based. We are Lutherans, specifically the ELC denomination, if you're curious. But we also teach science. Now, we choose secular curriculum. Again, I have a video completely on that if you'd like to watch why we do that. But we choose secular curriculum because I've yet to find a Christian-based curriculum that wasn't biased, that didn't go out of its way to say that people who believe things like evolution are crazy, or you shouldn't do that, or only present the idea of creation and not the idea of evolution. And I think a lot of that is done because, let's face it, a majority of homeschoolers, especially if you look at the history of homeschooling, are more conservative-minded, are more homeschooling for religious reasons. So a lot of that curriculum that is pushed has that perspective on it. I think that is changing, and I think we're getting a lot more diversity out there when it comes to the different types of homeschoolers we're seeing, and I'm hoping the curriculum will also represent that. But straight up, I think you can teach both of them, but unfortunately there's not a curriculum I've seen that can do it. Number 5, I don't think public school is bad or the enemy. I think public school serves a very important purpose. Like I said, I think education is a right for every child, and although I do not think the public school necessarily is the best fit for every child, it's an option that some children wouldn't otherwise have. I mean, we often forget about the services that the public schools also provide. Speech therapy, different food. If I know our public school does different meals through the summer and during the school year. Last time my daughter was in public school, the hot lunch program was free to everybody. It didn't matter your income. So there are a lot of services that they provide. It is a safe haven for a lot of children. And it is an option, a very good option for a lot of people. I don't think it's an enemy. I think it has flaws, but I also think homeschooling has flaws. There's no right or wrong answer. I think it's each individual family and each individual child. Number 6 is homeschooling isn't always fun. And I made a whole video on this because I feel like, especially on social media, homeschooling is portrayed as this magical, let's sit and have a picnic and talk about nature thing. And sometimes it can be that way, but sometimes it can be extremely frustrating, and you're yelling at your kid's yelling at you, and that's real life. I think we do a disservice to our fellow parents, our fellow homeschoolers, when we're only portraying the pretty things that happen in homeschool. And it doesn't always have to be that way. It doesn't always have to be pretty and magical. Sometimes it's reading out of a textbook. Sometimes it's watching a nature documentary. Like, it doesn't have to be what you see in those little squares on your computer or your phone. Number 7, you can be religious and use secular curriculum. This kind of sways back to that you can teach religion and science at the same time. We are a faith-based family, but we choose secular curriculum. And there are a few of us out there that do that, and we do it because, again, we see that bias that the Christian curriculum often puts out, and we don't want that, only that perspective for our children. But you can choose things, because I feel like you have your religious homeschoolers, you have your secular homeschoolers, and then you have the ones like me that are like somewhere in the middle, because we do a little bit of both. Number 8, social media inaccurately portrays homeschooling. I think this is very true on Instagram. To me, Instagram, I had to leave Instagram because it just became a place where people were trying to push products or sell things or present images that aren't true. If you're more concerned about getting the right image or cropping a thing or making sure the product is placed correctly, that's not the point. I'm so sick of being sold things and not having genuine interactions or connections with people because they're more concerned about things like money. So I don't think you, especially if you are new to homeschooling, should really engage in a lot of things like Instagram that don't give the accurate picture of what homeschooling can be. And again, I think you often see that on YouTube, where it's portrayed in a certain way that this is the best choice you could ever make. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. In all things in life, we want multiple perspectives and opinions on things. Number 9, Socialization when you're homeschooling, I think, is a valid concern. Like I've said in the past, we often divide ourselves into little groups, and I think that can have some negative consequences. So for example, the co-ops in my area are religious based. So much so that you have to sign a statement of faith to even go to this co-op. And I, again, talked with them about what they specifically meant by that, and you literally had to agree to everything that they believed, and you could not bring any outside ideas out into the group, which I think is a really big negative. Again, I feel like we segregate ourselves into these little groups, and when we're only surrounding ourselves with the same opinions, what are we going to learn? What can we learn from each other? So I think there's a downfall there, and I think socialization is important. I think having activities, but being around people that don't think and act exactly like you is important. And that is one of the reasons that a fellow mom and I run a homeschooling group that is open to everybody, every age, every religion, every belief, whatever it is, because our common thread is we chose homeschooling, but we can have so many different opinions on that. We don't have to agree in order to socialize in a group. All right, so that is my unpopular homeschooling opinions. So if you have any questions, please leave them down below. But again, thank you for watching.